Do you like scary stories? Welcome to Reality versus Fantasy. Is it real or fake? My name is Ronnie Nichelle, and I'll tell two bone-chilling stories, one real and one fake. Then you get to guess which story is real or fake at the end of the show. So get comfy, put on some comfortable clothes, and snuggle up. During this episode, I'll be wearing a red Bundock biker short set from Fashion Nova. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell for new video posts. You ready? Our first story consists of a woman in a burning dress. This story is called Screaming Jenny. The old storage sheds along the tracks were abandoned shortly after the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad was built, and it wasn't long before the poor folk of the area moved in. The sheds provided shelter of a sort, although the winter winds pierced through every crevice. And the small fireplaces that the poor constructed did little to keep the cold at bay. A gentle, kindly woman named Jenny lived alone in one of the smaller sheds. She had fallen on hard times, and with no family to protect her, she was forced to find work where she could and take whatever shelter was available to someone with little money. Jenny never had enough to eat, and in winter, her tiny fire barely kept her alive during the cold months. Still, she kept her spirits up and tried to help other people when they took sick or needed food, sometimes going without herself so that another could eat. One cold evening in late autumn, Jenny sat shivering over her fire, drinking broth out of a wooden bowl, when a spark flew from the fire and lit her skirts on fire. Intent on filling her aching stomach, Jenny did not notice her flaming clothes until the fire had burnt through the heavy wool of her skirt and began to scorch her skin. Leaping up in terror, Jenny threw her broth over the licking flames, but the fluid did nothing to douse the fire. In terror, Jenny fled from the shack and ran along the tracks, screaming for help as the flames engulfed her body. The station was not far away, and instinctively Jenny made for it, hoping to find someone to help her. Within moments, her body was a glowing inferno, and Jenny was overwhelmed by pain. Her screams grew more horrible and her steps slowed. She staggered blindly onto the tracks just west of the station, a ball of fire that barely looked human. In her agony, she did not see the glowing headlight of the train rounding the curve, or hear the screech of the brakes as the engineer spotted her fire-eaten figure and tried to stop. A moment later, her terrible screams broke off as the train mowed her down. Alerted by the whistle, the crew from the fire station came running as the engineer halted the train and ran back down the tracks towards poor dead Jenny, who was still burning. The men doused the fire and carried her body back to the station. She was given a pauper's funeral and buried in an unmarked grave in a local churchyard. Within a few days, another poverty-stricken family had moved into her shack, and Jenny was forgotten. Forgotten, that is, until a month later, when a train rounding the bend west of the station was confronted by a screaming ball of fire. Too late to stop, the engineer plowed over the glowing figure before he could bring the train to a screeching halt. Leaping from the engine, he ran back down the tracks to search for the mangled, burning body, but there was nothing there. Shaken, he brought his train into the station and reported the incident to the station master. After hearing his tale, the station master remembered poor dead Jenny and realized that her ghost had returned to haunt the tracks where she had died. To this day, the phantom of Screaming Jenny still appears on the tracks on the anniversary of the day she died. Many engineers who have rounded the curve just west of the station found themselves face to face with the ghost of burning, screaming Jenny, as once more she makes her deadly run towards the Harper's Ferry station, seeking in vain for someone to save her. Do you think the story of Screaming Jenny really took place? Find out at the end of the show. My second story is a recollection of a haunted Elsa doll. This story is called The Haunted Doll. Think of haunted dolls, it's likely the creepy old Victorian porcelain kind that comes to mind, none of which you probably have laying around. Still, don't get too comfortable around kids' toys too soon though. a Disney's Frozen Elsa doll that was gifted for Christmas in 2013 in the Houston area made headlines when it seemingly became haunted. Per KPRC2 News, the doll recited phrases from the movie Frozen and sang Let It Go when a button on its necklace was pressed. For 2 years, it did that in English, but in 2015, it started alternating between Spanish and English. There wasn't a button that changed these, it was just random. The family has owned the doll for more than 6 years and never changed its batteries. The mother says the doll would randomly begin to speak and sing even when its switch is turned off. The family decided to throw the creepy doll out in December of 2019. Weeks later, they found it inside a bench in their living room. The kids insisted they didn't put it there, and Mother Madonia believed them because they wouldn't have dug through the trash outside. Madonia told KPRC2 Houston News. At this point, Elsa ceased to sing the English rendition of Let It Go altogether, speaking only Spanish when pressed.
Ojalá jugáramos en la nieve todo el tiempo. Hacer magia con nieve juntas es muy divertido. A mi hermana Ana y a mí nos gusta jugar en la nieve dentro del castillo. Soy la princesa Elsa de Arendelle.
The family then double-bagged the bizarre doll and placed it at the bottom of their garbage, which was taken out on garbage day. They went on a trip shortly after, but when they returned, Elsa too had come back and was waiting in the backyard of their home. This time, the family mailed Elsa to a family friend in Minnesota who taped the haunted doll to the front bumper of his truck. It doesn't seem to have made its way back to Houston yet, as per Madonia's latest Facebook update on the creepy doll. Do haunted dolls truly exist? In this story, how do you explain the doll making its way back into the house? Or did a neighbor dig the doll out of the trash and place it in the backyard? Or how can you explain the change in languages the doll presented? The truth behind this story will be revealed at the end of the show. And now the moment you've all been waiting for, the question of whether which story is real or fake. Here goes. Let's start with story number 1, Screaming Jenny. Did this story really take place? Nah, it isn't real. This story may have sounded familiar to you since it has been told numerous times. Screaming Jenny is an urban legend, American folklore tale of a woman who died and has been spotted over and over again by many people on the anniversary of her death in West Virginia. And how about story number 2, the haunted doll? Did these events really take place? Yes, they did. It happened to the Madonia family in Houston from 2013 to 2019. Listening to horror stories isn't for the weak. Whether the story is real or not, that creepy feeling you get when reading or hearing something scary makes us question everything we think we know.